here. How are you doing today? I hope you're having an amazing day. Today we're going to be finishing up Leviticus, and I'm not sure how much left of Matthew. I know we finished up Leviticus today. So let's go ahead and go live in the group. What's up, everybody? We are live in the group. Happy Wednesday. What is it? Wednesday, right? Happy Wednesday today. So we're going to be reading Leviticus 24 through 27, which is the end of Leviticus, actually, and then 24 through 27 of Matthew today as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I appreciate everybody for being here. And with that, let's jump on into today's reading. Looks good, looks good. Everything looks great. And boom. So Leviticus 24. So all Leviticus has been um like laws and things, really, a lot of don't sleep with this person, don't take this person's wife. There was a lot of that in there recently. The last like three chapters have all been about how you should um you should behave sexually. It talks, about homosexuality. It talks about taking your brother's wife and the different things you should do and how you should make atonement for those things. So today we're going to read Leviticus 24. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Olive oil and the bread set before the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "Command the Israelites to bring you clear oil of pressed olives for the light, so the lamps may be kept burning continually. Outside the curtain, that shields the ark of the covenant law, in the tent of meeting, Aaron is to tend the lamps before the Lord till from evening till morning continually. He is to This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come." So I wonder why the importance of keeping the lamp burning, just because that way there's always light and not darkness. In light and darkness. I don't know. The lamps on the pure gold lampstand for the Lord must be tended continually. Take the finest flour and bake 12 loaves of bread. Use 2/10 of an ephah of each loaf. Arrange them in two stacks, 6 in each stack, one on the table of pure gold before the Lord. By each stack, put some pure incense as a memorial portion to represent the bread and to be food offering presented to the Lord. This bread is to be set out before the Lord regularly, Sabbath after Sabbath, on behalf of the Israelites as a lasting covenant. Right. It belongs to Aaron and his sons, who are to eat it in the sanctuary area, because it is the most holy part of their perpetual share of the food offerings presented to the Lord. A blasphemer put to death. Now the sons of an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father went out among the Israelites, and a fight broke out in the camp between him and an Israelite. The son of the Israelite woman blasphemed the name with a curse, so they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelemith, the daughter of Debri, the the Dantite. They put him in custody until the will of the Lord should be made clear to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Take the blasphemer outside the camp. All those who heard him are to lay hands on his head, and the entire assembly is to stone him. Say to the Israelites, anyone who curses their God will be held responsible. Anyone who blasphemes the Lamb of the Lord is to be put to death. The entire assembly must stone him, whether foreigner or native born." Wow, so if you heard him, you had to kill him. That's pretty crazy. When they blaspheme the name, they are to be put to death. Anyone who takes the life of a human being is to be put to death. Anyone who takes the life of someone's animal must be make restitution, life for life. Anyone who injures their neighbor is to be injured in the same manner. Fracture for a fracture, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The one who has inflicted the injury must suffer the same injury. Whoever kills an animal must make restitution, but whoever kills a human being is to be put to death. You are to have the same law for the foreigner and the native born. I am the Lord your God. Then Moses spoke to the Israelites, and they took the blasphemer outside the camp and stoned him. And the Israelites did as the Lord commanded Moses. Wow. Leviticus 25. The Sabbath year. The Lord said to Moses at Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land, I'm going to give you the land itself. The land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years sow your fields, and for 6 years prune your vineyards and gather your crops. But in the seventh year the land is to have a year of a Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself, or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath will be food for you, for yourself, your male and female servants, and the hired worker and temporary residents who live among you, as well as your livestock and the wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. The year of Jubilee. Count off 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the seventh Sabbath years amount to a period of 49 years. Then have a trumpet sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the seventh month on the Day of Atonement. Sound the trumpet throughout the land. Consecrate the 15th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It must be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property in your own clan. The 15th year shall be a jubilee for you. Do not sow and do not reap that what grows of itself, or harvest the untended vines, for it is a jubilee, and is to be holy for you. Eat only what is taken directly from the fields. In this year of jubilee, everyone is to return to their own property. If you sell land to any of your own people or buy land from them, do not take advantage of each other. You are to buy from your own people on the basis of the number of years spent in Jubilee. They they are to sell to you based on the numbers of years left for harvesting crops. Hmm, interesting. When the years are many, you are to increase the price, and when the years are few, you are to decrease the price, because what is really being sold to you is the number of crops. Do not take advantage of each other, but fear your God. I am the Lord your God. Follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill, and live there in safety. You may ask, what will we eat in the seventh year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year that the land will yield enough for 3 years. While you plant during the 8th year, you will eat from the old crop and continue to eat from it until the harvest of the ninth year comes. The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Throughout the land you hold as a possession, you must provide for the redemption of the land. If one of your fellow Israelites come poor and sells some of their property, their nearest relative is to come and redeem what they have sold. If, however, there is no way to redeem it for them, but later on they prosper and acquire significant means to redeem it for themselves, they are to determine the value for the service since they sold it, and refund the balance to the one whom they sold it. They can then go back to their own property. But if they do not acquire the means to repay, what is sold will remain in the possession of the buyer until the year of Jubilee. It will be returned in the Jubilee, and they will then go back to their property. They can then go back to their property. Anyone who sells a house in a walled city remains the right of redemption a full year after its sale. During that time, the seller may redeem it. If they do not redeem before a full year has passed, the house in the walled city shall belong permanently to the buyer and the buyer's descendants. It is not to be returned in Jubilee. So land has to be returned, but a house doesn't. Interesting. Hmm. And I think it's interesting that you can sell it, but you got a year to buy it back. Um, hmm. I don't know. Interesting. When is all my classes? But houses in villages without walls around them are be considered to belong to open country. They can be redeemed, and they are to be returned in Jubilee. The Levites always have the right to redeem their houses in Levitical towns which they possess. So the property of the Levites is redeemable. That is, the house sold in any town they hold is to be returned in the Jubilee, because the houses in the town of the Levites are their property among the Israelites. But the pasture land belonging to their towns must not be sold. It is their permanent possession. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and unable to support themselves among you, Help them as you would a foreigner and a stranger, so that you can continue to live among they can continue to live among you. Do not take interest or profit from them, but fear your God, so that they may continue to live among you. You must not lend them money at interest or sell them food at profit. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you, do not make them work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired workers or temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of Jubilee. Let's see. Then they and their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans and the property of their ancestors. Because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt, they must not be sold as slaves. Do not rule over them ruthlessly, but fear your God. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you, and they have round you from them you may buy slaves. From them, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and make them your slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. If a foreigner resides among you becomes rich, and any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to the foreigner or to a member of the foreigner's clan, they retain the right of redemption after they have sold themselves. One of their relatives may redeem them. Any uncle or cousin or any blood relative in their clan may redeem them. If they prosper, they may redeem themselves. They and their buyers are to count the time from the year they sold themselves to the year of Jubilee. The price for the release must be based on the rate paid to the hired worker for the number of years. If the many years remain, they must pay for the redemption a larger share of the price paid for them. If only a few years remain until the year of Jubilee, then they are to compute that and pay for the redemption accordingly. They are to be treated as workers hired from year to year. You must see to it that those whom you owe service, do not rule over them ruthlessly. Even if someone is not redeemed in the years this way, and they and their children are to released in the year of Jubilee. For the Israelites belong to me as servants. They are my servants who are brought out of Egypt, and I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 26. Reward for obedience. Excuse me. Do not make idols or set up images or sacred stone for yourselves, and do not place a carved stone in your land or bow down before it. I am the Lord your God. Observe my Sabbath and make reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. If you follow my decrees and are careful to obey my commands, I will send you rain in its season, and the ground will yield crops and trees their fruit. Your threshing will continue until grape harvest, and the grape harvest will continue until planting, and you will eat all the food you want and live safely in your land. I will grant peace in the land, and you will lie down, and no one will make you afraid. I will remove wild beasts from the land, and the sword will not pass through your country. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall by your sword before you. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000, and your enemies will fall by the sword before you. I will look on you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your number, and I will keep my covenant with you. You will still be eating last year's harvest when you come to move out and make room for new. I will I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. Punishment for disobedience. But if you do not listen to me and carry out all these commands, and if you reject my decrees and abhor my laws, and fail to carry out all my commandments, and so violate my covenant, then I will do this to you. I will bring on you sudden terror, wasting disease, and fever that will destroy your sight and sap your strength, and you will plant seed in vain because your enemies will eat it. I will set my face against you so that you will be defeated by your enemies. Those who hate you will rule over you, and you will flee even when no one is pursuing you. If after all this you will not listen to me, I will punish you for your sins 7 times over. I will break down your stubborn pride and make the sky above you like iron and the ground beneath you like bronze. Your strength will be in vain because your soil will not yield its crops. No will trees of your land yield their fruit. If you remain hostile towards me and refuse to listen to me, I'll multiply your affliction 7 times over as your sins deserve. I will send wild animals against you, and they will rob you of your children, destroy your cattle, and make so few in your numbers that your roads will be deserted. If, in spite of these things, you do not accept my correction, but continue to be hostile towards me, I myself will be hostile towards you, and will afflict you for your sins 7 times over. And I will bring the sword on you to avenge the breaking of the covenant, and you will withdraw into your cities. I will send a plague among you, and you will be given into enemy hands. When I cut off your supply of bread, 10 women will be able to bake bread in one oven, and they will dole out the bread by weight. You will eat, but you will not be satisfied. If, in spite of this, you still not listen to me, but continue to be hostile towards me, then my anger will be hostile towards you, and I myself will punish you for your sins 7 times over. You will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. I will destroy your high places, cut down your incense altars, and pile dead bodies on the lifeless forms of your idols, and I'll abhor you. Abhor you. I will turn your cities into ruins and lay waste your sanctuaries, and I will take no delight in the pleasing aroma of your offerings. I myself will lay waste the land so that your enemies who live there will be applauded. I will scatter you among the nations and will draw out my sword and pursue you, and your lands will be laid waste, and your cities will lie in ruins. Then the land will enjoy its Sabbath years all the time that it lies desolate, and you are in the country of your enemies. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbath. All the time that it lies desolate, the land will have the rest it did not during the Sabbath you lived in it. As for those of you left, I will make their hearts so fearful in the lands of their enemies that the sound of a wind-blown leaf will put them to flight. They will run through flee. They will run as though fleeing from the sword, and they will fall even though no one is pursuing them. They will stumble over one another meeting as though fleeing from the sword, even though no one is pursuing them. You will not be able to stand before your enemies. You will perish among the nations. The land of your enemies will devour you. Those of you left will waste away in the lands of their enemies because of their sins. Also, because of their ancestors' sins, they will waste away. But if they confess their sin and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and hostility towards me, which made me hostile towards them, so that I sent them to the land of their enemies, then their circumcised hearts are humbled, and they pay for their sin. I will remember my covenant with Jacob, my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham, and I'll remember the land. For the land will be deserted by them, and will enjoy its Sabbath while it lies desolate without them. They will pay for the sins because they rejected my laws and abhorred my decrees. Yet in the land, Yet in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or abhor them as to destroy them completely, breaking my covenant with them. I am the Lord their God. But for their sake, I'll remember the covenant with their ancestors, whom I brought out of Egypt, in the sight of the nations to be their God. I am the Lord. These are the decrees, the laws, and the regulations that the Lord established in Mount Sinai between himself and the Israelites through Moses. All right. Last chapter, Leviticus 27. Redeem what is the Lord's. The Lord said to Moses, Speak to the Israelites and say to them, If anyone makes a special vow to dedicate a person to the Lord by giving the equivalent value, set the value of a male between the ages of 20 and 60 at 50 shekels of silver, according to the sanctuary shekel. For a female, set her value at 30 shekels. For a person between the ages of 5 to 20, set the value of a male at 20 shekels and a female at 10 shekels. For a person between 1 month and 5 years, set the value of a male at 5 shekels of silver and that of a female of shekels of silver. For a person 60 years or more, set the value of a male at 15 shekels and of a female at 10 shekels. If anyone making a vow is too poor to pay this specified amount, the person being dedicated is to be presented to the priest, who will set the value according to what the one making a vow can afford. If what they vowed is an animal that is accepted as an offering to the Lord, such an animal's given Lord becomes holy. They must not exchange it or substitute a good one for a bad one or a bad one for a good one. If they substitute one animal for another, both it and the substitute become holy. If what they vowed is ceremonially unclean animal, that is not acceptable as an offering to the Lord, the animal is to be presented to the priest, who will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever value the priest then sets is what it will be. If the owner wishes to redeem the animal, a fifth must be added to its value. If anyone dedicates their house as something holy to the Lord, the priest will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever the value the priest then sets, so it will remain. If anyone who dedicates their house wishes to redeem it, they must add a fifth to its value, and the house will again become theirs. If anyone dedicates to the Lord part of their family land, its value must be set according to the amount of seed required for it, 50 shekels of silver to a homer of barley seed. If they dedicated a field because of the year of jubilee, the value that has been set remains. But if they dedicate a field after jubilee, the priest will determine the value according to the number of years remaining until the next year jubilee, and its set value will be reduced. If the one who dedicates the field wishes to redeem it, they must add a fifth to its value, and the field will become theirs. However, if they do not redeem the field, or if they have sold it to someone else, it can never be redeemed. When the field is released in Jubilee, it will become holy, like a land devoted to the Lord. It will become priestly property. If anyone dedicates the Lord a field they bought, which is not part of their family land, the priest will determine its value to the year up to the year of Jubilee, and the owner will pay its value on the day as something holy to the Lord. In the year of Jubilee, the field will be reverted to the person to whom it was bought, and one whose land it was. Every value is to be set according to the sanctuary shekel, 20 grafts to the shekel. No one, however, may dedicate the firstborn of any animal, since the firstborn already belongs to the Lord. Whether an ox or sheep, it is the Lord's. If it is one of the unclean animals brought back at its set's value, adding a fifth of the value to it. If it is not redeemed, it is to be sold at its set's value. But nothing that person owns and devotes to the Lord, whether a human being or animal or family land, may be sold or redeemed. Everything so devoted is most holy to the Lord. No person devoted to destruction must be no person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. They are to be put to death. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. Whoever would redeem any other tithe must add a fifth of the value to it, but tithe of the herd and flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod will be holy to the Lord. No one may pick out the good from the bad or make any substitution. If anyone makes substitution, both the animals and the substitute become holy and cannot be redeemed. These are the commandments the Lord gave Moses at Mount Sinai before the Israelites. And then tomorrow we start Numbers 1. All right. So there we go. Just blowing through the Old Testament there. We've got Genesis, Exodus, and now Leviticus. Got quite a few here. Numbers, Deuteronomy. I hear a lot about Deuteronomy. You don't hear much about, a little bit about Numbers. I don't hear anything ever, anybody quoting stuff from Joshua. Not really Judges, not really Ruth. Chronicles, yes, not Samuel. I don't ever hear anybody say Kings. Oh, that's Kings 1 and 2. I don't ever hear that. Like these, I just find it interesting. Numbers, yes. Deuteronomy, yes. Book of Joshua, I don't ever hear anybody quoting that. Book of Judges, maybe. Never hear Book of Ruth. Book of Samuel, I think I've heard that before, but not really. I've never heard anybody quote Book of Kings. Never, I've definitely heard Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, definitely, Psalms, definitely, Proverbs, definitely, Ecclesiastes, yes, Song of Songs, not really, Isaiah, not really, Jeremiah, I believe so. Lamentations, not really. I've never heard anybody really say, "Oh, that's Lamentations 3 in chapter 4." Ezekiel, I have. Daniel, not really. Hosea. I'm gonna have to look how to say it. Joel, Amos, Abadiah, Jonah, Micaiah. Look at all these books. All these books I've not even heard of. Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai. Zechariah, Malachi, Mark, Luke, John, Romans. So then I guess Haggai or Zechariah here, Malachi, and then here's the New Testament's Matthew, is where we're at now. Then we got Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, theologians, Timothy, Titus. Like I've never heard of a new Titus. I've never Philemon, Hebrews, yes, Titus and Philemon, not really. The rest of these, yeah, pretty much. Peter, John, Jude. You don't hear people quote much from the book of Jude. It's like you don't hear that much. Jude chapter, book. You don't really hear that much. Interesting. Well, a lot of books I didn't even know existed, to be honest with you. So that's interesting. So we're supposed to go through chapter 24 through 27, but we might just read through 28 because it looks like there's 28. We might as well just wrap it up today. That we can go through the crucifixion and the resurrection. Because I believe each of these books, to some degree or another, interpretation from another POV of someone of the same exact stuff, basically. So the birth of Christ and everything, it's going to be just a different version, right? Isn't that what it is? It would be interesting. I don't know that I've read that many other books. So interesting. So Matthew 24, the destruction of the temple and the sign of end times. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him and called his attention to its building. Do you see all these things? They asked. Truly, I tell you, no, not one store will be left, not one stone here will be left on another, and every one will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting on Mount Olives, his disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age? And Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars, rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nations will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness and the love of most will grow cold. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as testimony to all nations, and then to the end will come. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet of Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down and take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back and get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great distress equaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, there's a Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. For false prophets or false messiahs and prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time, so if anyone tells you, there he is out of the wilderness, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of man, the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there vultures will gather. Immediately after the stress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the people of earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming out of the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Hmm. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds and four winds from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at your door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. The day and the hour unknown. But the but about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in the heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking merry and giving in marriage. But up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be in the coming of the Son of Man. Two men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. Two women will be grinding at the handmill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour of the coming of the Lord. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known of what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for the servants whose masters find him doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he will put he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, "My master is staying away a long time," and begins to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with drunkards. The master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, an hour he's not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25. Parable of the virgins. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 of them were wise. The foolish one took their lamps out and did not take any oil with them. The wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both of us. You instead go and sell oil and buy some for yourself. Go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourself." But while they're on the way to buy oil, the bridegroom arrived, and the virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the others came. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you. Therefore keep watch, because you not know the day or the hour." The parable of the gold bags. Again, it was like a man going on a journey, who calls the servants and trusts his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to the other 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, and according to his ability he went on his journey. The man who received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the one who received 1 bag went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more." His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." The man with 2 bags of gold also came. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more." His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Then the man who received 1 bag of gold came. "Master," he said, "I knew that you were a hard man, harvest harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. The master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take that bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever's been giving more, they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even whoever has given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them and thrown into the worthless servant outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Sheep and goats. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will gather before him, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, and take your inheritance and the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit. Then the righteous will come to answer him, Lord, when did you see the hungry? Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did you see a stranger and invite you in, or needed clothes and clothe you? When did you see sick or in prison and go and visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of those least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. When he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you are accursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They will also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, wherever you did not do for one of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but to the righteous, they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Matthew 26. The plot against Jesus. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said this to the disciples, as you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in place of the high priest, those whose name was Cephas, and schemed to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or there will maybe a riot among the people. Jesus anointed in Bethany. While Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which he poured on his head as he was reclining in the table. When his disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste? He asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you always have, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Judas agrees to betray Jesus. One of the 12, the one named Judas is Iscariot, Iscariot, Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest. How do you say his last name? Let's see how to say it. See what we got here.
Iscariot,
Iscariot.
Iscariot.
Iscariot. Judas Iscariot went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" Wow, he actually went looking for the money. They didn't even bribe him. I didn't realize that. So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. The Last Supper. Well, I didn't realize that Judas actually went out searching for the opportunity to betray Jesus. I thought that he was approached and then took it. Not that it makes a difference to some degree, but it does to some degree, you know? On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, the teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house." So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. When the evening came, Jesus was reclined at the table with the 12. And while they're eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." They were very sad and began to say to them one after another, "Surely you don't mean me, Lord." Jesus replied, "The one who has dipped his hand in the bowl will betray me." Jesus replied, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man will go just as is written about him, but woe to the man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if had not been born." Then Judas, the one who had betrayed him, said, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." Jesus answered, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took the bread that they had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to the disciples, saying, "Take and eat this. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine until from now until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. Then Jesus told him, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter replied, even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." "Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." But Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the disciples said the same. Guess, let's see now. I don't know why I can't think of how to pronounce this.
Gethsemane.
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 Gethsemane. Gethsemane. When Jesus and his disciples went to a place called Gethsemane, and he sat down, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell upon his face to the ground and prayed, "Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Keep watch and pray so you do not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed for a third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, "You are still sleeping and resting. Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered in the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Jesus arrested. While he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, with him a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with him. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Jesus said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of the companions reached for a sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Put your swords back in its place, Jesus said to him, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? Do you not think I can call on my Father, and he will at once put dispose of more than 12 legions of angels? Well, but now but how then the scriptures will be fulfilled that say it must be happen this way? I don't know why I'm getting upset. I'm getting like emotional. I don't know why. Uh, do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way? Huh. Huh. Um, In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, I'm leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs. Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in your temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. This has all taken place that the writings of this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Wow. Jesus before the Sanhedrin, Sanhedrin. Jesus before the Sanhedrin. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to, how do I say that? Cephas?
or Caiaphas, Caiaphas or
Caiaphas.
Caiaphas.
Caiaphas. Caiaphas. Caiaphas. So those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priest and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they could not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, two came forward and declared, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. You have said so, Jesus replied. But I say to you, to all of you, from now from now on, will see the Son of God sitting on the right hand of the Mighty One, and coming on the clouds of heaven. And then the heavenly priest tore his clothes and said, he has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look now, you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death, they answered. They then spit in his face and struck him with their fist. Others slapped him and said, Prophesy to us, Messiah, who hit you? Now Peter was sitting down in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gatehouse where another servant girl saw him and said to these people, This fellow is with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know that man. After a little while, those standing up went up to Peter and said, Surely you're one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses and he swore to them, I don't know the man. And immediately the rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the last word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. He went outside and wept bitterly. Judas hangs himself. In the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans on how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw Jesus was condemned, He was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. What is your responsibility? That is your responsibility. So Jesus threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, it is against the law to put this in the treasury since it's blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then it is spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field just as the Lord commanded me. Jesus before Pilate. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, Are you the king of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At the time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Bar. Well, his name was Jesus too, Barabbas. His name was Jesus too, huh? Both were named Jesus. Interesting. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner. His name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called Messiah? For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and have Jesus executed. Which of these two do you want me released to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah? Pilate asked them, and they answered, Crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate, but they shouted all the louder, Crucify him. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere and insisted and but that instead an uproar had started, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I'm innocent of this blood, man, he said. It's your responsibility. All the people answered, His blood is on us and our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed over them to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus to the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. They knelt in front of him and mocked him. Hailing, Hail, King of the Jews, they said. They spit on him and took his staff and struck him in the head again. And after they had mocked him, they took off his robes and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. The crucifixion of Jesus. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Galatia. Galatia? I'm not sure. They offered Jesus to drink wine to drink mixed with gall, but after he tasted it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided his clothes by casting lots, and sat down and kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him: This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Two rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. In the same way the chief priests and teachers of the law and the elders mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He is the king of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we'll believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he said, I am the Son of God. In the same way, the rebels were crucified with him, also heaped insults on him. The death of Jesus. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. But about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in loud voice, Elijah, Eli, Eli, lem mas barakti, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of those who were standing here heard this, and they said, he's calling Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar and put it on the staff and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. And at the moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. And the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection, went in the holy city to appear to many people. When the centurion who's when the centurion and those who with him were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, surely he is the Son of God. Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs, and among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. The burial of Jesus. As evening approached, there came a rich. So what happened with the center, the man on the right and left? I guess that's maybe told in another story since it's not here. Oh man, I felt upset about it. I don't know why. As evening approached, there came a man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered it to be given him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of a rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb, the guard at the tomb. The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priest and the Pharisees went to Pilate. Sir, they said, we remember that while he was still alive, that the deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the third day. Likewise, otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he is risen from the dead. The last deception will be worse than the first. Take a guard, Pilate answered. Go and make the tomb as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting a guard. Matthew 28, final chapter. Jesus is risen. After the Sabbath, at dawn, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went and to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go and tell his disciples he is risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you. So the woman hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. Greetings, he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. The guards report. While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priest everything that had happened. When the chief priest had met the elders and devised a plan, they gave the guards a large sum of money, telling them, you are to say his disciples came during the night and stole him away while you were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. So the soldiers took the money and did as they instructed, and this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. The Great Commission. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee on the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw them, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Um, Interesting. I think maybe it's in Luke or one of the other books. So again, like I haven't read the whole Bible. This is probably the most that I've actually read consistently at any one time. Um, I'm not really sure. I mean, I know why. I mean, I know that, but I'm not sure why I got so uh, choked up about that. I've read Jesus's passing and his sacrifice he's given for us many times, but I've never felt as emotional about it as I did today. Um, so anyway, yeah. So there is the Great Commission, and where Jesus says, "Go out and spread His word, spread the word of God to nations, and baptize in His name, and build a great nation." So I can't believe that's how bad they treated. I mean, um, but that is the story of Jesus Christ. Thank you for joining me today. It was amazing reading today, finishing up Matthew and Leviticus. Tomorrow we'll be starting Numbers and Mark. I'll be looking very forward to it. We'll be doing Mark 1 through 3 and Leviticus and Numbers, I believe, is next. Numbers 1 through 3. So let's double check that. I think it was Numbers was next. Yep, Numbers is next. So we'll be doing Numbers next, and then Matthew or Mark 1 through 3 will be tomorrow. Keep reading 3 chapters a day until we get through all this. Man, I didn't realize there were so many books. Some of these books must be very short. And I wonder why so few of these, like I've never heard of the Book of Joel or Amos, to be honest with you. Obadiah, I've heard the name, but I didn't know it was a book in the Bible. Hmm, interesting. Well, anyway, thank you very much for joining those that watch. Anyone that's comments along, I appreciate you being here, and we'll see you tomorrow. God bless. Peace.